Hello, and thank you for joining us on the Optimal Wealth Podcast, where we discuss creating passive income through real estate. Our mission is to help educate investors on how to grow wealth and invest passively. My name is Jarod Alexander, and I am a passive investor, currently in 6 syndications as a limited partner. I am also the founder of Optimal Equity Group, which is a real estate investment firm that was created primarily to help educate the passive investor. We do that in a couple of different ways. One is we provide education to help give you the confidence to get into the passive investing space. And two, each episode we will interview amazing guests that explore the strategies, insights, and secrets used by successful investors. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just starting out on your real estate journey, this podcast is designed to help give you the confidence and knowledge you need to make informed and profitable decisions. Good morning. Welcome to another episode of the Optimal Wealth Podcast. And my name is Jarod Alexander, and I am your host. And today we got a special guest on the show, Adam Smith. Adam, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, man. I'm excited to dive into your journey and your experience in the real estate investing space here. And if you could, why don't you just give us a quick background of, where you were before you got started in real estate, what led you to the steps of taking the initial leap to get involved in real estate and where you're at today.
Yeah, great to talk a little bit about where I've come from. I mean, it's something that has been going on since I was a teenager. I started as a cleaning clubs at a country club. And so I was helping, and I saw all these people that were coming in, wealthy individuals, and I started to have conversations with them about, how they built their wealth. And they just talked about different types of investments that they got into. Fast forward, I got into my career, which I've been in a W-2 job now for almost 20 years, working for a government agency. And I really took some of that to heart when I started with it. I had a retirement account, so I started investing into stocks as soon as I got into it. I started looking, late in 2019. I really want to find a way to invest and do things a little bit more aggressively. With stocks, you only had certain things that you can do. I mean, you can buy it and you just had to wait and see if it goes up and ride the wave when it goes down. So that's when I started to look at other ways to generate wealth. And real estate was one of those big areas that everybody talks about. I mean, they talk about every millionaire, really part of their big piece of their portfolio is real estate. And so I started to look at that. And so in 2020, I bought my first single family residential property. And I thought, I'm going to continue to buy a bunch of these, and then I'll be able to, retire early and become financially independent. And I started to get into, my wife and I, we ended up buying 4 other properties, and we've renovated those things, rehabbed them, rented them out, and they're doing well for us now. And as I continued on that path, I thought, okay, well, how do I continue to scale and get a bigger portfolio? And it just led me down to different pathways that I could go. You can build a team. You can look at things that other people are doing and invest in what they're doing. And I know that's, what you're doing on this podcast is talking about some of the passive investing. And so we're starting to really get into those things now in our portfolio.
Yeah, so thanks for that overview there. And then how many properties currently do you have right now under in your portfolio?
So right now we have 5 single family residential properties. There's 3 long-term. We've done a midterm, which is catering towards the travel nurse or that travel corporate person. And then we also have a short-term rental in the Louisville, Kentucky market.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, midterm, are you talking about typically renting these leases out maybe 30 days at a time or 30 or 6 months? Is that
Yeah, so anything when we talk about midterm for us is anything over 30 days, but less than a year. So the travel nurses who have a 3 month stint at a hospital, because we do have a lot of hospitals in and around the Louisville area. It's a great market for those individuals. We also have a lot of big companies that bring in people from all over the country, and so when they come in, they need a place to stay that's furnished, and so that's one place that we looked at wanting to get into.
Yeah, nice. And so I know for me, and we actually talked about this a little on your podcast when I was on, a few weeks ago. But, I had the idea kind of like you, Adam, where I was just going to buy a bunch of single family homes and scale that up because the goal is to be, financially free, right? Have these passive investments replace my expenses, so I could be more work optional, have more time freedom, spend with my loved ones, family, so on and so forth. Or, has your trajectory changed a little bit since you got into the real estate and buy a single family? I mean, because you can only get so many mortgages, you got to get a little bit more creative with financing. Walk us through that mindset for us.
Yeah, so when I started looking at real estate and investing in real estate, I started looking at the stack method, the whole idea that you buy a couple of single family rentals, you continue to buy those over a couple of years, and then you start to substitute those out for bigger and better properties that have better cash flow. And so we started to do that. Also looking at the idea of, well, why don't we just continue to buy single families and get that equity? I think my mindset has changed even a little bit more in that I'm not just looking to take my money now and just continue to buy rental properties, but also invest in passive investments at the same time. And so I know, we got into a syndication deal recently as a limited partner. And so that was something that we really didn't think about doing until probably 5 or 10 years down the road when we wanted to take some of the equity that we currently had and jump into that later on down the line. So yeah, we definitely have changed that path. We've also changed the path of which kind of investments that we wanted to get into. So I know we talked about we've got 3 different types of properties. Now we're starting to really reevaluate which ones do we really like based on the amount of work that it takes to maintain those properties. And so, yeah, there's a lot of different ways of looking at it. That when we first started into it, we definitely are looking at different ways of doing it going forward.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And now, so kind of to cap what I was talking about earlier, as I was going to buy all these houses, I realized how much work was involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the goal was for me is I was going to be passive, right? Which means in the single family, I started out buying a turnkey property, so it had a renter in there, property management, handling the day-to-day repairs, so on and so forth. But what I realized is I still had to be involved at some level, still manage the property manager, things like that. And then, still working in W-2, I was like, this is taking a lot of additional time, when my why is like, hey, I want to create more time freedom to be with my family. I'm spending more time, like hours and hours first analyzing the deals, and then I get the property closed, and now I'm managing the property manager. So anyways, needless to say, it wasn't as passive as I thought it was, which led me down the road of syndications and being an LP in these deals, because that for me is what I found that was the most passive I think as you can possibly get. So are you still actively, you and your wife actively managing these properties, or do you have property managers, or what does that look like?
So my wife is a great property manager. She's the
Okay.
one that enjoys doing that. I got the W-2 job, and so we've continued to manage those properties personally. But likely down the road, it will be something that we would consider, look property manager or doing something with those properties and potentially, scaling up to a bigger property or into another investment that's less hands-on.
Yeah. Makes sense. And then scaling, right? The whole idea is just to scale. And I think, like me, I've realized that in a multifamily, and you talk about that stack method. I mean, you're putting just as much energy behind a single family home as you would, say, a fourplex or an eightplex, right? Or even a 16 unit and up. The dollar figures get, definitely higher, but I mean, you're still essentially doing, same amount of work, maybe a little bit more, but it's a lot more scalable for sure. Now, real quick, I this just comes to mind because I just interviewed Yona Weiss on the podcast, which he's considered the cost segregation king, right? And we were just talking about this strategy where, if you do manage short-term rentals, there's the tax benefit where you can take that against your W-2, right? Now, are you taking advantage of that, or have you had any experience with that strategy?
Yeah, so this will be the first tax year where we have that single short-term rental under that, and so that's a tax strategy that we are looking at for our with our CPA, trying to figure out how to do that, because with her managing the properties and having that, it's not considered passive anymore for the IRS and for the taxes. It goes on that Schedule C as a business. So we are looking at how we do cost segregation and whether it would benefit us in the short term to be able to reduce our, my W-2 wages.
Yeah. I mean, and I'd be interested to hear how that goes, because and just kind of maybe even put some dollars to it as well. But I mean, it's a significant amount of money that can be saved against your W-2, which is huge, right? That's a big, advantage of real estate, right? Is not only can you create some generational wealth, right, and definitely create a great lifestyle for you and your family, but you get to take the tax depreciation, from these investments, which is huge. You're just lowering your, taxes is one of our biggest expenses that we pay throughout our lifetime, right? And if we can, reduce that in any way, I mean, that's big. So, anyways, yeah, curious to hear how that goes. So moving on, let's talk about the limited partner, the first deal you did. If you could, I always ask the question, what was the due diligence process? How did you learn about this operator? Walk us through that, because it's definitely nerve-wracking. I know for me in my first investment, wiring over $50,000 to an operator, where especially you being more active, on these investments, you're completely hands off. You don't have any say in the deal. So walk us through that process for us.
Yeah, so really the deal kind of fell in my lap. It came from a good friend of mine that I was in a real estate mastermind locally, and he had been approached by the operator who is well known inside of the Louisville area for real estate. He was doing a deal that he wanted to take advantage of the expansion that Ford is doing with their battery plant down in the central part of Kentucky. So there's a couple of huge plants that are going on down there. Well, when you build a big plant like that, you need people, right, to operate those plants. And so the idea of, hey, there's going to be a lot of growth in these areas, all the way from like Louisville down to Bowling Green, Kentucky. I mean, that's a big swath of land that you have opportunities to be able to buy properties, rehab them, put them back out on the market as rentals, and then potentially sell them later on after the equity gain. As we started to look at the due diligence, I talked to the GP, the general partner on the deal. Got to see the deck that was that they put together. We started to look at the area ourselves and whether it made sense and is actually a market that we are currently looking at investing in as well. So we knew the area pretty well and some of the demographics that were happening. Then, as far as the general partner, again, it's a reputation game in a lot of cases. And so this person was highly recommended, talking to some other people who I knew in the space and asking them, have you done deals with this individual? What have you seen from those deals? What they're doing inside of it is very similar to what he has done on a smaller scale in his own portfolio. And when I say smaller scale, it's not really small in comparison to what I'm doing, but smaller than what he's putting in place. But he has a lot of the systems already in place.
Now, real quick, is this a multifamily value add or a land deal or?
So actually, it's interesting. This is actually a deal where he is buying single family residential properties, buying them, fixing them up, and going and renting them, and then after a certain amount of time, looking to sell those properties. So it's a little different than the multifamily space that I know you play in. But being in a syndication and being a limited partner definitely had a different ball game in there.
Gotcha. Okay, so was he buying like multiple houses at a time, or?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. And so you're essentially maybe not necessarily structured this way, but investing in like a fund, so to speak, or a portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's got a business plan based on that where you get returns. And I'm curious, are these 1 to 2 year terms, or because is he doing like the Burr method essentially?
He's looking at the Burr method, but really the thing is it's 5 years. We're looking at preferred returns at the through the 5 years, and then there's an equity split at the very end of the deal. It's actually kind of interesting because they structured the deal that at the end, when you get your returns, you actually have the option not only that you can take a cash, but you can potentially get ownership in one of the properties. And so that's going to be interesting to see as we get down to the very end of whether we decide to take the cash or if we're doing it from taking on the property. But I guess that's really going to be something that we'll consider as we get a little closer to the end there.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, because it depends on where the market is, what the house's value, things like that. So, okay, yeah. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, that's definitely, and that's the cool thing about this, right? Is, I mainly focus on the multifamily value add space, but if you've been listening to this podcast for the past 5-7 episodes, we've had storage. You can invest in storage through syndications. You can invest through oil and gas. You can invest through debt funds. And like Adam's talking about, single family portfolios too. There's so many different ways to structure this. And so I think, for the listener, just educate yourself on the niche you want to get involved in. And it doesn't hurt to diversify either, right? Diversification is huge. But really determining, also, and this would be a good segue into this, Adam, is, really determine your goals, right? What type of investor do you want to be? Do you want to be an active investor, or do you want to be a passive investor? Because there is a big difference in the two. And so, Adam, if you could maybe give a general overview of active versus passive investing and share your experience, which you kind of already had, but we were talking about before, you're looking to transition more into the passive role. Mm-hmm. So if you could walk us through that and help the listeners understand the difference there.
Yeah, so I think you've been living it yourself, and you're flipped over to that passive side a little faster than I have. The active investor being there, you are taking on the deal. And if you buy a turnkey, then you're working with the property manager, getting someone in place. Or if you're taking on and being the property manager, you're having to screen the tenants and get them ready to move into the property, doing the property maintenance yourself. You can do all that kind of things. where we took 3 of our 5 properties that we had to do significant renovations to. So not only did we have to find the property, but we had to figure out how to deal with the rehab. So getting contractors, vetting contractors, how do you get money to fund the deals. And so I'm working with hard money lenders at the same time. I'm doing all this while I'm also doing a W-2 job. And so when you're talking about being the active investor, it's not just like I'm just going to hand over my money and let somebody else do all of that work. I'm doing all of that work, or my wife is doing that work. And so you are the one who's there on the ground. Not only are you you could be the contractor doing the work, you also are the one who's finding the way to fund those deals. You're being the property manager. I mean, you're doing everything, or you're finding the people to do all those things. Whereas, as you're talking about with the passive investing, you're finding someone who has all of those things or has a plan with those things involved. And for the most part, I mean, you are trusting that individual that they have done the appropriate due diligence on those types of people. They're looking at the contractors. They're looking at how are they going to fund those deals. How are they going to do the property management? If you're dealing with single families or multifamilies, or in the self-storage space, how do they handle the clients that are in there? And then, ultimately trying to, dispose of the properties in a lot of these cases with the syndication deals at the very back end, them doing it. But as being a passive investor, I mean, you are the person that you're doing the due diligence on the front end, but at the end of it, you are waiting, through that time frame, just waiting for returns to happen, either on a monthly basis, if it's distributions on a monthly basis, or however it's structured, where you might get the equity split at the very end. So it's really depends on what you're getting into but yeah, active is much more hands-on and a lot more time intensive than the passive investing.
Yeah. Well, and then to clarify, if you're like Adam and I, we like being active in real estate. I love real estate. I like being hands-on. But I also like the passive side too. And it's a plan B. It's creating some income. They call it that horizontal income, right? And so the more I can create with that, because active, I mean, I'm getting paid on what I'm putting into it, right? That horizontal income that's that making money while I'm sleeping, right? So that's that mailbox money you hear us refer to. So, definitely determine what are your goals, what are you looking to achieve. If you want to just be completely passive and enjoy your W-2 and enjoy your day-to-day work, then passive is probably the way to go. If you're looking at transition out of that W-2 into something you do enjoy, in real estate's you find that that to be what you want to go for, then maybe a more of an active role, and you can be both as well, right? Mm-hmm. And that leads into, what type of investor are you, active versus passive, and then go into, all right, cash flow versus growth, right? Because for me and Adam, we're probably more of a growth investor right now because we do have a W-2 job. But at the same time, we are really, trying to create more cash flow, that we're building up these month-to-month, this month-to-month income from that horizontal, that we can eventually have the option to leave our W-2 jobs and create more time freedom for ourselves. Right, Adam? Yep. So let's do this. I want to talk real quick, because I think this is very interesting, is, on your podcast, Adam, which I really like, the Dollars and Senseless podcast, actually, just to shout out real quick on that, I encourage everyone to go check that out. Because he talks about, you talk about wealth and kind of a broader sense, right, than just real estate, and how to be smart with your money. And so if you could walk us through your process there, because you touched at it at the beginning of, you get, we're taught to put our money, go to college, put our money in a 401k, get a job, work to your 60, 65, hopefully you have enough money to retire, right? Walk us through your process and what your strategy is with that. You still have your 401k? Are you still in the stock market? You know, maybe some percentage of your portfolio, yeah, tell us a little bit more about that if you don't mind.
Yeah. So I think it's really good to talk about the overall wealth. I mean, what you're talking about is passive investing, which is it's just a part of the strategy for building wealth. I mean, you can be in all kinds of different ways of building wealth that can be active, can be passive. And so to have an idea of what you want to do and what you want to ultimately get from those types of financial endeavors, I think, is really something that you have to be personally invested in. No pun intended. But it's really, we do still have our 401k because I'm a government job. We got a 401k, and lucky I also have a thrift savings plan as well. So there's the retirement bucket that is entirely in stocks. So those two areas are entirely in stocks, and it's very simple. It's in a broad stock market index. I don't do anything crazy with it. I just let the market do what it does. That's my like ultimate passive investing, because it's literally I hand that money off and I don't even have much due diligence. I can't talk to anybody. I just hand it off and hope the market does what it's been doing since it started, which has been going up and to the right. With our deals that we have with syndication, we actually took money out of the 401k and put it into a self-directed IRA, so that way we can invest those funds with that syndication. So we again took a part of that and decided we wanted to build our retirement funds still with real estate. Outside of that, we have our own savings account, our checking account, a brokerage account, just as something to handle the liquidity that we want for ourselves, the savings, the cushions that we want. So we have a lot of different strategies, and if you want to talk a little bit about how we do manage our finances, I can talk a little bit about that. But yeah, from an investing standpoint, we do have a couple of different options outside of our real estate portfolio.
Yeah, I would like to touch on that just real quick, if you don't mind. I do have one question though on the 401k. Now, were you able to, well, actually, let me just ask it this way. When you transferred that to the self-directed IRA, was that your 401k or was that maybe your wife's 401k or what?
No, so we were allowed a transfer inside of my 401k. So I'm lucky enough that our plan actually allowed for us to take vested funds out. We couldn't take everything out. We didn't want to take everything out. We took out a portion of those funds and transferred that to another company that does the investing in stuff like real estate or coins or all other types of assets that our 401k doesn't allow us to do.
Yeah, well, a quick shout out to Advana, which Adam's referring to as a custodian. So you gotta, this has got to go through a third party custodian, and then they transfer that money into the deal that you want to invest in with an operator. But that's interesting. Thanks for touching on that, because I do know in a lot of cases. Well, I can just say actually from the experiences that I've heard people share about that if you're active in your job, a lot of times you can't take that money out of the 401k and invest it in a syndication. So that's interesting. So I encourage y'all to, if you're interested in this type of investing, check with whoever your 401k is through and see if that's maybe an option, because that's actually what I'm going to do. I had no idea that you could even do that while still being active in your in your W-2.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll just say, I mean, it's just check your plan documents, find out whether it's even an option, call HR, talk to the rep that's at that company and just see what you might have or might be able to do. And we were lucky enough that I did know that we were able to take the money out. And then when this investment came along, we were like, let's try it. Let's see how things go.
Well, so with that, let's go into the finances just real quick. What does that look like for you? Like
Yeah, so again, it's something that you learn as you go and you try to figure out how you're going to handle it. And I'm one of those individuals that you start to look at what do you have coming in and where do you spend that money. And so we looked at our budget from the very beginning, and I've been doing it since I started cutting grass back when I was 12 years old. I mean, I've been saving money since then. We started, so I have a savings account that we put, about 6 months worth of our living expenses. So we do know how much we typically spend a month. That's in an emergency account. So if for some reason the car breaks down, or if I lost my job, we would have at least 6 months of expenses where we could kind of figure things out. We got our checking account, which handles most of our monthly expenses, and then from there is we take any of the excess, which it sounds like excess, but it's really planned at the very beginning when we're doing our budget of how much we wanted to put into a brokerage account. And this year we actually decided and the reason why Jarod and I met was we wanted to stretch ourselves on how we're going to do any more real estate investing, and that's to go find partners to get into. And so we do have the opportunity to invest in our own deals, but we also want to bring people along that want to invest and be passive investors potentially in our deals and be able to buy properties with using other people's money. There's people who've got, like myself, a 401k that, they're just having the money sit in there and they want to do something, or they've been interested in doing real estate and they just never wanted to be that active investor, but they want to be part of it because it's cool. It's fun to say you're a real estate investor. And so now I'm stretching myself to go find those types of individuals who trust me to do what we've done already with our single families and start to invest there. And then as we're also doing, we continue to look at our own real estate portfolio and whether, it's continuing to work for us. And then if it ultimately doesn't, we may look to, sell a property, whether we need to do a 1031 exchange and so we can defer some of the taxes and the capital gains that come from selling a property and put it into potentially a multifamily deal, and whether we are the operators on that, the general partners on it, or if we find somebody that we trust to go in and take advantage of their deals and become another limited partner in another deal. We continue to look at those.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for walking us through that. And what comes to mind is like Adam and I, we didn't just get here to where we're at today without getting started, right? Like Adam first did that single family home, and then what he talked about the stack method is one house led to another. Now he's got 5 properties in his portfolio. He's got a passive investment that he's invested in as an LP, right? And just having different buckets. He's got his 401k. So, when you're looking at getting into this, it's just, for me, it was just getting my foot over that threshold, right, on that first single family home, which was scary, right? Adam, you could probably attest to that. I mean, it's nerve wracking, right? Buying a house, and being, an investment, being an investor in real estate. But once you do, it's like, okay, like I wanted to go buy 100 more houses like that same day. I saw the opportunity in it. And so if you're looking at getting it, just get started, right? Just take that initial step, figure out, again, going back to your goals. If you want to do, the active side, then look at the single family, fourplex, things like that. And if you want to just, compound your investments and be, more passive, then syndication is the way to go. And you can partner with someone like Adam and I to help do the due diligence on the operator on the front end, where you're just placing your money and just get that cash flow, and 3 to 5 years, depending on the investment, doubling your money and just keep rinsing and repeating, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I want to touch on too. I like how you talked about cutting yards when you were 12 years old, because that I did the same thing, and I think that speaks to who we are today, right? Kind of entrepreneurs from an early start. I wanted to start creating money, and they told me, hey, you start working for it, right? And I got a buddy in the neighborhood, and I paid him a little extra, and so we were mowing yards and weed eating, from a young age. So yeah, it's definitely interesting to hear other people's experiences there. But Adam, let's go ahead and transition into our next segment here, which I like to call the fire round. And we're going to go through a series of 4 questions. The first one being if you could recommend a book on real estate for investors just starting out, and then another book that is particularly good for cultivating a positive mindset.
Yeah. So, gosh, I mean, there's so many good books on getting started. I know, I've, had people tell me, Rich Dad Poor Dad's always in there. The one that if you're looking specifically at real estate and getting into investing, the book on rental property investing by Brandon Turner. I mean, that to me set a framework on how do you do rental property investing properly. I think that was something I really had to think about. The second one, if you're talking about a positive mindset, it's set in a sad environment, but a man's search for meaning by Viktor Frankl. I mean, you want to talk about somebody who, despite one of the most atrocious events in the world, how many years you want to even talk about, finding a purpose. And I love one of the quotes, and I wanted to make sure I had it with me just so I didn't misquote it. But those who have a why to live can bear with almost anyhow. Somebody who is going through the Holocaust and being able to find meaning through that. His purpose and what got him through was helping others find their purpose. And he talked about that. And I think that, again, as you talked about, finding your why, I mean, if he can do that through the Holocaust, we can surely do that in our, environment that we currently live.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I was actually just listening to the book. What was it? The Gap in the Gain, by Benjamin Hardy. And anyways, they referenced that book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And I've read it too. Great book. And a really short read. I really encourage anybody, who hasn't read that to definitely check that out. And yeah, I mean, man, you talk about one of the, like you said, living through the Holocaust, just the unspeakable things he had to go through in that environment. And he went into detail on some of the stuff, but he left a lot of it out too, right?
Oh, I'm sure.
And I mean, the first day, his wife, they split him up, right? And his wife got killed, and in one of the gas chambers, and he went to another camp, and he talked about taking his wedding ring off, that way he could just kind of move on, right? And that he talked about that she was going to forever be in his heart. And so anyways, yeah, it's definitely a book that's, it's definitely sad in some ways, but I love that quote too, Adam. I'll put that in the show notes as well. I think you hit it spot on there.
Yeah.
So let's see. Next question. Moving on here. Like, if you can share a specific goal or dream that holds special significance to you.
Yeah. So I think you talked about the podcast that I'm doing, the Dollars and Senseless podcast. My passion, the thing that I ultimately want to do with my life is educate youth on financial literacy. We have so many people in this country, not just in the city I live, but in the world, who do not know how to manage their finances and get themselves into financial situations, all because it's not taught early enough in their life. And I'd love to get to them first, or at least early enough that maybe it changes their trajectory. You're not gonna get everybody, and I don't have any delusions of grandeur thinking about it, but to think that there are individuals out there who just need to hear that message of, I need to take a look at what I'm doing with my life. Where's the money coming in? Where is it going? And how do I want my life to be? And how do I take my financial future to set up that life?
Yeah, no, I love that, man. And just, again, just kind of breaking that cycle of, what we're taught in school, right? You get the 401k, go to college. I mean, how many times, Adam, do you come across people that got 4 years in college and they come out $120,000 in debt, and they don't even go into the career that they went to college for, right? And they're, six figures in debt. And it's so sad to see that. And if we can just kind of break that cycle, and I love what you're talking about doing, is just helping them educate on just, it's just a simple shift, right? Just start saving money, investing it, right? Creating that horizontal income, which I think is huge, right? And like for me, making money, I make good money in sales and what I do, but if I get hurt or something happens to me, like that income stops right away, right? So I'm having a plan B, right, with my investments, that my family and, the people in my life can be taken care of, God forbid, if something happens, right? And kind of, going back to like that man's search for meaning. I mean, life is, stuff happens in life, man. And, I've had some friends my age that unfortunately, have passed away and didn't have any, didn't really get to live out some of their dreams and stuff. You just never know when it's your time, and kind of getting a little deep here, but why not live life to the fullest while we can, right? And not plan to be 60 to when we're traveling the world. Is let's do that in our 30s, our 40s, our 50s, right? Like you don't have to wait to enjoy life. So anyways, and helping starting out, going, educating it, from that a young age, I think is huge. So love what you're doing there. And then, so let's talk about, how do you structure your day to maintain a healthy work-life balance? And do you have a morning routine that you can walk us through?
Oh yeah. So structuring your day, I mean, that's been a struggle for me for years. Having a W-2 job, you have a set time that you got to work. And so to do something like real estate investing on the side, or to do a podcast, or whatever you're doing, you got to be intentional about what you're doing, because if you're saying, your family's, the big thing, and you're not spending time with them, then that's not great. So I look out at each day, and I've got my calendar already set, specifically for my job, and then I can look out at what I have for the rest of the week. I'm looking at, I've got my set time, and then outside of that, I've got sleep that I got to get. So that's 7-8 hours of sleep. What am I going to do with that other time that I have? And so every day is, once I get done, I'm always going to be sitting at the dinner table with my family. That is a big thing. I will always be sitting at the dinner table if I'm in town. Outside of that, it's a discussion of, I want to spend time with my kids and do things that they're doing until they're going to bed, and then spending time with my wife and on times. And then also there may be some nights where I say I'm going to be working on something, whether it's real estate investing or just educating myself. I spend a lot of time each week kind of just looking at and prepping for that week to see what do I want to accomplish, and how do I do that with while making sure that I'm not neglecting the important parts of my life.
Yeah.
Then, talking about morning routine, it's a little harder because I have to take my kids to school 2 to 3 times a week, and so it kind of starts my day at a different time sometimes. So I try to wake up early enough that I can kind of wake up. I've been really starting to be more consistent with the meditation practice. So just trying to be mindful, kind of starting my day, trying to clear my head, focus myself in a certain way. I like the idea of journaling. Most of the time I do that in the evening, but sometimes I do that in the morning. But I always try to do something kind of in the morning, kind of active, whether it's just standing up, walking around the house, or when it's nice outside, maybe getting outside and walking. So those are really the things in the morning, just to kind of get myself started. And then just making sure, I've already know from the day before, because I've set myself up for what the next day is going to look like. It's just really quickly reviewing what are the 2 to 3 things that I really want to accomplish for that day.
Yep. No, I love that. And yeah, that's been the biggest thing for me is setting, like on Sundays, is taking that time, hour and a half to really plan out my week, right? Which is because if it's on the calendar, it's going to get done. If it's not, it's not, right? And
Mm-hmm.
no, I love that. And then if you could be remembered for one thing, what would that be?
So I just want to be remembered as a good husband and dedicated father. What you leave behind is you want it to be better than what it was when you came in to the world. And so to pass on those things, it's tough. And those are things that once they go on, you're hopefully your family, outlast you. You're just hoping that what you gave to them, they appreciate. But I know that that's not always what you're gonna get. But if I'm gonna say, I'm hoping that my family knows that I was doing it for them.
I love it. Love it. Well, and Adam, if you could tell listeners where they can find you if they want to connect and learn more about you.
Oh, yeah. So I've got the Dollars and Senseless podcast with Adam Smith. That's on YouTube and any of your podcast players. I'm on Instagram in a couple different places. If you're looking for me in real estate, it's at Bald Guy REI. So made sure to keep my haircut the way it is. If you're looking for me from more of my personal stance, the financial side of things, it's at Adam. It's Adam Smith 28. Also, I'm out there on LinkedIn and also on Facebook as well.
Awesome. Well, Adam, I really enjoyed our conversation today, and I love what you're doing, and can't wait to see, maybe have you on, in a what 6 months to a year, and see how much you've accomplished. So
yeah,
it's
I appreciate
exciting.
it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Thank you for listening to the Optimal Wealth Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, be sure to optimize your results and take massive action on what you have learned here today. For more, visit optimalequitygroup.com.